It began as an ordinary Sunday morning. The Bennetts, Michael and Elena, along with their 2 children, Lucas, 15, and Sophie, 10, had planned a peaceful family hike in the countryside near an old forest reserve outside town. It was one of those rare weekends when the Wi-Fi stayed off, phones were in backpacks, and time belonged only to them. They laughed, took silly photos, and wandered deeper than usual. Around noon, Lucas spotted something strange between the trees, an ancient-looking stone arch covered in moss, barely visible behind the ferns. "That wasn't here before," he said, brushing away leaves. Elena tilted her head. "It looks like a gate. Maybe part of an old building?" Michael took a closer look. No footprints, no signs. "And it's cold." Suddenly, the air around the arch shimmered, like heat waves on asphalt. The family froze. A low hum began, deep and resonant, vibrating through the earth. "Guys," Elena whispered. Before they could react, the ground beneath them gave way. The world twisted. Time bent. Trees melted into smoke. Everything turned white. They woke in the same forest, but it wasn't the same. Gone were the distant sounds of cars. No airplanes overhead. No cell signal. The trees looked taller, wilder. The sky seemed quieter. Lucas checked his phone. No bars. And the times, stuck? Sophie tugged at Elena's sleeve. "Why are those people dressed funny?" On a dirt road nearby, a man in suspenders pushed a bicycle with a basket of bread. A woman wore a headscarf and carried a tin pail of milk. An old truck rolled by, coughing smoke. It didn't take long to understand. The signs were everywhere: old vehicles, prices in shillings, black and white posters about rationing and war. A newspaper page pinned to a pole read, "June 4, 1943. Shock came first. Then disbelief. Then fear. Okay, Michael said, pacing. "It's a film set. A reenactment. That's all." "Michael, there are no cameras," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. They walked to the nearby village. Cobblestone streets. Horses. Wooden market stalls. And eyes. Dozens of eyes, suspicious, wary, curious. To avoid attention, they claimed to be distant relatives from the north who had lost everything in a fire. A kind elderly woman, Mrs. Hargreaves, offered a small guest house to stay in for a few days. That night, under an oil lamp, the 4 of them sat in silence. "We've gone back in time," Lucas said. "No," Michael replied. "We're hallucinating. Or dreaming. Or dead." But Sophie, still clutching her stuffed rabbit, whispered, "It feels real." The days that followed were hard. No hot water. No phones. No television. Food was rationed: dry bread, boiled vegetables, powdered milk. People looked at them oddly when they spoke. Sophie cried for cartoons. Lucas wanted his headphones. Michael's hands shook every morning. And Elena, once so composed, now stared at the sky for hours. "How do we survive here?" she asked one night. "We're not built for this." But the world didn't care. The 1940s were not forgiving. They tried blending in. Michael helped carry crates at the train station. Elena worked in the local bakery, waking at 4 a.m. Lucas volunteered at the town library. Sophie helped Mrs. Hargreaves tend the chickens. Gradually, their clothes change. Their words change. Their pace change. But they never stopped searching. They returned to the forest daily, hoping the portal would reopen. They marked trees, mapped paths, tried recreating the conditions of that strange moment. Nothing worked. Weeks turned to months. One night, Lucas found an old journal in the attic of the guest house, filled with cryptic notes and drawings. Some were maps. Others were diagrams of stars, moon phases, and something that looked eerily like the stone arch they had seen. The journal was signed, A.J. Bennett 1927. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. "Bennett, like us." He ran downstairs, clutching the book. "Elena," he shouted. "Dad, I think we're not the first ones. I think someone from our family was here before." Lucas could barely sleep that night. He flipped through the fragile pages of the journal again and again, running his fingers over the signature, A.J. Bennett 1927. Each entry seemed to echo with something deeply familiar, not just because of the name, but because of the handwriting. The slant, the sharp T.S. They resembled his father's. The first page had only one sentence: "Time isn't a line. It's a door, and someone has opened it." By morning, the journal had become the family's lifeline. Michael sat at the kitchen table, rubbing his temples. Could this A.J. Bennett be an ancestor? Or us? A version of us? Lucas replied. He drew that portal. The exact one we saw. He knew something. Inside the journal, AJ described experiments with temporal interference, strange energy fluctuations in the forest, visions of other times, dreams of a future with metal birds and talking boxes. It sounded like science fiction. But the last entries were darker. Paranoia. Fear. They're watching. The ones who know. They don't want the door to close. Meanwhile, the family's life in 1943 continued. Elena, who had once worked as a project manager, was now baking dozens of loaves every morning, her hands raw from kneading dough. But she found peace in the routine, even beauty. The way the townspeople bartered, shared, and looked after each other reminded her of a world lost in her own time. Michael, once a software engineer, had become strong and sunburned. He helped rebuild the old train depot and learned to fix things with his hands. He stopped checking his wrist for a smartwatch that no longer existed. Lucas, always glued to screens before, now spent hours at the library, poring over war records, birth registries, and town maps. The librarian, Mr. Clay, a quiet man with a prosthetic leg and sad eyes, took a liking to him. Sophie, the youngest, adapted the quickest. Children often do. She made friends, learned to skip rope, and fed the chickens every morning without complaint. But at night, she still whispered to her rabbit, "Please take us home soon." One day, Lucas found a photo in a dusty town record book. It was a grainy image of a group of people standing by the forest's edge. The caption read, "Local experimenters 1927. Disappeared under unknown circumstances." And there, standing in the back row, was a man who looked almost exactly like Michael. The resemblance was uncanny. Lucas ran home, slamming the door behind him. "Dad, you need to see this." Michael's face turned pale. That's impossible." That evening, the family gathered around the journal and the photo. Everything felt heavier, more real. "We didn't just fall back in time," Elena said. "We were drawn here." Lucas flipped to the journal's last page. There was one line, almost faded. "The door opens when the blood remembers." That night, Elena had a dream. She stood in the forest, surrounded by fog. A voice whispered, "You've been here before." She turned, and saw a child running toward the trees, laughing. The child turned to face her. It was Sophie, but younger. Dressed in old-fashioned clothes, she woke in a cold sweat. The next morning, a knock came at the door. A man in a dark coat, never seen before in town, stood with a crooked smile. "Michael Bennett?" he asked politely. "We've been expecting you." Michael hesitated. "I think you have the wrong." The man cut him off. "Oh no. We're quite certain. You've been leaving footprints where they don't belong." He tipped his hat and walked away, but not before whispering, "The forest watches." The family felt the walls closing in. Michael paced. "Who is he? How does he know us?" "They know we don't belong here," Elena said. "They've always known." Lucas whispered, "Then we need to find the others. The ones from that photo. Maybe they found the way out." The journal held clues. Mentions of the Circle, an underground group obsessed with time, hidden symbols carved into trees, coded messages in church bells. They decided to follow them. And so, on a foggy morning, the Bennetts packed bread, matches, a compass, and the journal, and ventured deep into the forest once more. They didn't know what they were walking toward, only that they had to keep going. The forest had changed. The same trees surrounded them, but the air felt thicker, heavier, as if time itself had memory here. Each step crunched old leaves and whispered with ghosts of another era. The deeper they moved, the quieter the world became. Birds stopped singing. Wind stood still. Lucas held the journal tightly. "According to this," he said, tracing a page with his finger, "there should be a marker, a tree with a carved spiral, near a stream. That's where AJ said he met them." The Circle. Sophie clutched Elena's hand. "I don't like this forest anymore." Elena, trying to stay strong, nodded. "We'll find the sign. Then we go back." After hours of searching, they heard it, the faint trickle of water. And then Lucas saw it. A thick, ancient oak, with a perfect spiral carved deep into its bark. Beneath it, half buried in soil, was a small iron lantern. Inside it, dry despite the years, was a folded note. "If you've come this far, the path will test you. Only truth opens the door." The forest turned darker as the sun dropped. Fog rolled in. They followed a trail of carved symbols, spirals, arrows, hourglasses. Finally, a moss-covered door appeared in the hillside. It wasn't visible until they were close. Lucas pressed his hand to it. The stone responded. A low rumble, a groan, and the door slid open. Inside, a tunnel lit with torches that burned without flame. The walls were carved with scenes, people stepping through glowing circles, clocks shattering, hands reaching across centuries. They entered cautiously. At the end of the tunnel was a vast underground chamber. Dozens of people sat in silence, men and women in 1940s attire, some even older. They turned as the family entered. An elderly woman with silver hair stepped forward. "You're the Bennetts," she said, without surprise. "How do you know us?" Michael asked. "Because we've been waiting for you, since 1927. Her name was Clara. She was a scientist. Or had been. Now, she called herself a temporal guardian. She explained everything. The circle had been founded in 1899 by people who discovered natural time fractures, invisible faults where time bent and reality blurred. The archway the Bennetts had fallen through was one such fracture. They had catalogued dozens over the years. Some led to days, some to centuries. Most were unstable. Many who entered never returned. But then, in 1927, one of their own went missing, A.J. Bennett. Michael's voice trembled. "He's our ancestor?" Clara nodded. "More than that, he's the one who discovered the arch you entered. He was obsessed with the idea that his descendants would one day finish what he started." Elena leaned forward. "Finish what?" Clara turned to a massive map carved into the stone wall, filled with spirals and intersecting paths. "To find the stable fracture," she said, "and unlock the complete cycle." Lucas frowned. "The cycle?" Clara sighed. "Time isn't linear. It loops, like a song stuck on repeat. But not everyone hears the melody." She looked at Sophie. "Children often do." Sophie blinked. "I dream about the forest. And the portal. And the man with silver eyes." Clara stepped back, startled. "You've seen him?" Sophie nodded. "He watches us. But he's not mean. Just sad." Clara turned grave. "He was one of us. Once. Until time took him. Now, he waits near the fracture. Guarding it. Or trapped by it." The family stayed in the chamber for 3 days. They read, listened, questioned. They learned that the circle had tried to reopen the arch for years, but it required something specific. A convergence of energy, memory, and bloodline. The Bennetts were the key. "The portal recognizes your presence," Clara explained. "You are its echo." Michael stared at the flames. "If we are the key, why were we sent here?" "You weren't sent," Clara said. "You were called." On the final night, Clara gave Lucas a small silver device, smooth and round, no larger than a coin. "AJ made this," she said. "It tracks temporal vibrations. It will glow when you near the right fracture." "But what if we fail?" he asked. Clara smiled sadly. "Then time will fold again. And you'll be part of the song." As the family prepared to leave, one member of the circle, a young man named Elias, approached Michael privately. "There's something else," he said. "Not all fractures are natural. Some were made." Michael narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Elias looked over his shoulder. "There's a group, a hidden faction. They want to control time. Rewrite history. They've been hunting bloodlines like yours. They know we're here?" Elias nodded. "And they're coming." The next morning, the Bennetts returned to the surface. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Smoke rose in the distance, from the village. Sophie whispered, "We're out of time." Lucas pulled out the silver device. It pulsed softly. "We're close," he said. "The fracture's near." Michael turned to Elena. "One last chance." They followed the pulse. It led them deeper into the woods, where the trees grew in a perfect circle, and the air shimmered faintly. There, standing by the portal, was the man Sophie had seen in her dreams. He had silver eyes. The man with the silver eyes stood silently by the arch, his long coat gently rustling in the windless forest. He looked neither old nor young, timeless, like something carved from memory. His eyes shimmered like mercury, and when he spoke, his voice sounded both far and near. "I've waited for you." Sophie took a step forward, despite Elena's outstretched arm. "You're the man from my dreams." The stranger knelt slowly, his gaze meeting hers. "Yes, I've watched you all your life. I watched all of you." Michael's voice cracked. "Who are you?" The man rose. "I was once called Jonas. A member of the circle. A man of science. A seeker of answers. And then, I stepped into the fracture. Hoping to find truth." He pointed to the arch. "But truth has a price. Time does not forgive. It binds, it pulls, it remembers. Lucas whispered, "Are you trapped here?" A flicker of sorrow passed over Jonas's face. "Not trapped. Chosen. I became the guardian, the echo. A voice that warns and watches." Jonas gestured toward the shimmer in the air behind him. "The fracture is open. You've activated it with your presence, your bloodline. But it's unstable. You cannot simply walk through." Michael stepped forward. "Then how do we go home?" "You must complete the cycle," Jonas said. "Each of you must face what time has shown you. Only then will it release you." "What does that mean?" Elena asked. "It means," Jonas said, "you must choose what to carry forward, and what to leave behind." As he spoke, the forest began to bend again, sound warping, color shifting. And suddenly, they were no longer standing together. Each family member stood alone, not in the forest, but in a version of their deepest memory. Tornado Michael. He stood in a modern office tower, staring at a glowing computer screen. The weight of missed birthdays, broken promises, long nights, all came crashing back. Work had consumed him, but now, in silence, he realized, none of it mattered without them. In a reflection on the monitor, he saw Lucas and Sophie, small, smiling. He reached toward the image. "I want to be better," he whispered. "Not in the past. Not in the future. Now." The scene dissolved. Tornado Elena. She sat at a hospital bedside. Her mother lay pale, unconscious. Elena held her hand, the weight of never having said goodbye pressing on her chest. She had always run from grief, buried it under planning, fixing, organizing. Now, she let herself cry. "I forgive myself," she said, tears falling. "I don't want to live stuck in fear of loss." The hospital lights dimmed, and she let go. Tornado Lucas. He walked through a digital storm, pixels, notifications, static. The pressure to succeed, to be smart, to perform, it screamed from every direction. And yet, none of it had followed him into the past. There, he was seen, not for grades, but for who he was. He stepped out of the digital fog and looked up at the stars. "I want to choose my own path." The storm vanished. Tornado Sophie. She stood in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by toys, cartoons, sunlight. But outside the window, war sirens echoed. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, heart pounding. Then, she let it go. "I'm not afraid anymore." And the world grew still. Suddenly, they were back in the forest, the arch pulsing with energy. Jonas stood before them, smiling faintly. "You've faced the echoes. You've broken the loop." The arch flared, wind swirling with light. "But the choice remains," he said. "Cross, and return to your time. Or remain. Some find purpose in the past. Some cannot bear the noise of the future." Michael looked at Elena, then at Lucas and Sophie. "We go together. Always." They stepped forward as one. But something went wrong. A deafening roar shook the trees. A second figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked, masked, holding a device that pulsed red. One of them, the faction Elias had warned about. Jonas stepped in front of the family. "You shouldn't be here," the intruder snarled. "You've altered too much already." He raised the device. A blinding beam shot out, toward Sophie. Jonas dove in front of her. There was a flash, and then silence. When the light faded, Jonas was gone. So was the intruder. Only his cracked device remained, smoking on the ground. The arch pulsed wildly, shaking. Lucas held the silver coin tight. The fractures destabilizing. Michael grabbed Sophie. Elena reached for Lucas. And then, they stepped through. Everything spun. The world screamed. And then, nothing. They woke on the forest floor. Same path. Same trees. But something was different. Birdsong. A distant car horn. Michael pulled out his phone, signal restored. Date. Today. They were home. The world had moved on. But so had they. Michael quit his job a month later. He opened a small carpentry shop and coached local kids' sports on weekends. Elena became a grief counselor, helping others face the pain she once buried. Lucas started writing science fiction, time travel stories, journals about the past. He never stopped carrying the silver coin. And Sophie? She never forgot Jonas. She left a flower in the woods each year on the same day, in the same spot. One summer, a young girl found a stone by the tree with a spiral carved into it. On its back, one word. Remember. Some nights, when the wind is just right, and the moon casts long shadows through the trees, a shimmer appears between the ferns. No one dares go too close. But sometimes, just sometimes, a voice is heard, soft and far away. Time is not a line. It's a door,